Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Furlong, and today we're talking about the origins of life here on Earth. There are several hypotheses about the origin of life on Earth that are supported with scientific evidence. So as we look at this phylogenetic tree, we can see that at some point life had to have begun. Whatever that species was is called the last universal common ancestor, or LUCA. Geologic evidence does provide support for models about the origin of life on Earth. Based on geological evidence, we know that the Earth formed about 4.567 billion years ago, and that the environment was way too hostile for any life to be here until about 3.9 billion years ago. And the earliest evidence that we have of fossils dates back to about 3.5 billion years ago, which provides about a billion years from the time the Earth formed to the time we have life. Well, how could we get life from non-life, what is oftentimes referred to as abiogenesis? Well, there's several different models we can look at. We know that originally the primitive Earth provided inorganic precursors from which organic molecules could have been made. Where did these things come from? Well, there's lots of different hypotheses about this. Some say that it may have been on the surface of the oceans. Some say it could have been down at the bottom of the oceans near these deep sea vents. Those early oceans are going to be extremely hot. In fact, they're probably going to be boiling. They're so hot. And it's those high temperatures, along with the availability of all that free energy and the lack of any oxygen in the atmosphere, that could have helped for these inorganic precursors to become organic, which is why we don't really see this happening today, because we don't have the same conditions today as we did 3.9 billion years ago. Another hypothesis is that organic molecules could have been transported to Earth by a meteorite or a comet. This is known as the Cosmozoic theory, or also referred to as panspermia theory. Now, why do we think something like this? Recently, NASA has sent probes that have detected these organic precursors in the tails of comets. We're actually waiting for a probe that just left an asteroid, and it will be back to Earth in a couple years, and see what maybe those asteroids are. Do they have these same types of precursor molecules? Now, experiments have shown that it is possible to form these complex organic compounds from inorganic molecules. This setup is a picture of the Miller-Urey experiment. So we can see that in Miller-Urey experiment, they boiled some water. That would indicate the early oceans, which also produce water vapor. It went into a gaseous chamber where they put things like methane and ammonia and hydrogen, along with an energy source. They waited a couple days, and all of a sudden that water started changing colors. And when they started looking to see what's in this water, they found things like amino acids and nucleotides to show that, at least in the laboratory, it was possible for these simple or inorganic molecules to produce more complex organic molecules. Another hypothesis that is becoming more and more popular is the RNA world hypothesis that proposes that RNA could have been the original genetic material. Now, why do we think that? Well, RNA, of course, is simpler than DNA. RNA is single-stranded. DNA is double-stranded. We know that RNA can store hereditary information so that it can be passed from generation to generation. And of course, RNA can make proteins. So it's possible that if RNA had evolved first, then the more complex DNA evolved later. So exactly how life started on Earth, it's a mystery, lots of different hypotheses, but we do have scientific evidence to help support many of them. And of course, in a science class, you need to have evidence. I'll see you in class.